Hi, Belize.
Hi, Sam.
We have a couple changes happening to the podcast now after your beautiful analysis for videos. We will no longer be telling you guys about the cast or synopsis or logline of the film. I think at this point, we want to keep things spicy. We want to keep the momentum going of our commentary. And so we aren't going to tell you things like a Google search could say, per se. So, Belize, what will we be focusing on?
So instead, we're going to more so focus on what the essence of our videos have been up to this point, which is more so talking about different scenes that caught our attention, how we felt about certain moments or certain characters, what seems toxic, what's a trope, anything like that, that we personally noticed while watching these. And again, this is all just for fun. This is stuff that we notice that we either do or don't do in the films we make. We're not here to be snobby and critique anything.
The proper manner of making a movie.
Right. Or use specialized terms or anything like that. We want this to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah. And I think something we've certainly been on the same page about from the very beginning is the concept of making a movie is really hard. So at the end of the day, even the critiques we make, you have to take with a grain of salt. But this is all for the love of movies and all for the love of love. So with that in mind, what is the movie we are going to be talking about today, Belize?
The Notebook.
How can you talk about romance and not mention The Notebook? Can we all, in agreement, make the decision that any guy who tells you that his favorite movie is The Notebook is a red flag? Because it's so obviously not your favorite. My favorite movie is The Notebook, and my favorite animal is the penguin. An actual quote I had been told by a guy before.
Both together?
Yes, because penguins mate for life.
But in what context was it my favorite movie's The Notebook and my favorite animal's the penguin? Those don't relate.
I'm dead serious. He was getting to know me. He was like, so what's your favorite movie? And I was like, oh, Rosemary's Baby. And he goes, mine's The Notebook. I'm like, well, we're different, aren't we? Oh my God, Belize. How many times have you seen this movie?
So I had not, I think I saw it quite a few times when I was little, but I have not seen this since middle school. This is one of those few movies that are well-known romantic movies that I have not seen often.
This isn't a movie you rewatch. You know what I mean? This is kind of like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, those movies that just are sad. You know they're going to be sad. You know that it's going to break your heart. I don't think anyone wants to do that once a month. You know what I mean? Because you didn't remember the ending.
I remember a moment happening on the first wheel. I didn't remember what. And then I remember them getting wet in the rain and kissing and making out. I don't remember the older couple. So when it opened up like that and I was watching it with my roommate, this is Titanic. This seems like Titanic. And then he starts to read her the story. I was like, this is 50 First Dates? And I was so confused because I did not remember any of the older couple. I didn't remember any of the older couple, and their storyline is the parts that make me cry. So it was really weird that I didn't remember them at all.
It's just so flippin' funny that you don't remember that because okay, first of all, what is it about rain that makes everyone so sexy in movies? The second it rains, it's I have to devour your face right now. In the sunshine when you're actually basking in the beautiful glow of Ryan Gosling, that's fine. I can handle myself. But when he's dripping in the rain, when I was a kid, I loved that scene. The boat with the ducks, that I forgot about completely, and I was excited to see it again. But the elderly couple, I think what's so sad about them is that the structure of the movie, the elderly couple is the heart of the movie, because the structure of it is you're going along this fairy tale ride, it's the Princess Bride, you know what I mean? We're hearing about this story, and then halfway through, we as an audience all know the ending. So it's no longer that necessary to hear young Allie's answer of who she's going to choose because we know who she's going to choose. It's more devastating to see the outcome of that choice, that they did have this beautiful life. He did end up being a really good husband. He did end up stepping up to the plate for her, and they created a beautiful family, but she's sick. And that's what's so sad.
Oh no, are you going to start crying?
No.
Sam was texting me last night crying too, so I ended up calling her partway through. I think you cried within the first 10 minutes from just remembering the movie.
Yeah, literally, within the first like 14 minutes of the movie, because I paused it at 14 minutes when you called me, I was like, oh, this is that movie.
I have a confession to make. I didn't say it last night because I didn't want to affect your viewing of it, but my revisiting of this movie did not bode well for its performance.
Ooh, please go in. What about it? Like, what perturbed you?
So I'll go slowly through my reactions without so that I don't like come off right away being like it's, and as I say all this, I still cried, okay? So it's still confusing. But Noah is kind of toxic and Allie's kind of toxic but especially Noah. So like let's just talk about their meet, okay? He sees her, she looks free because she's playing bumper cars. And he goes up and asks her out, and she's like, no, thank you. Like, she clearly has a boyfriend with her. And then so his next thought is, let me just climb on to the Ferris wheel and basically climb on to them and then hang from here and essentially do a very toxic thing that a lot of boys that are younger have done before, which is threaten to hurt themselves if someone does, or threaten the person if the girl doesn't say yes to them. And it's one of those things where it's like little kid me was like, oh my God, that's so hot. Like he would literally risk his life just to go out with her. When really in reality, it's like he's literally dangling here forcing you to say yes to him. And also, not only is he getting her to say yes, but then he gets her to actually say that she wants to go out with him, which none of it she means because she takes it back later. But he like goes so far as to make her say that she wants to. It's really weird. And I think it's cute that like, she fights back or whatever and pulls down his pants, but like what he's actually doing.
Okay. So call me Poison Ivy because your girl is toxic. Yes, I'm not denying you whatsoever. Honestly, from like here's the thing for the people who watch these videos. Like I'll talk to Belize, I'll be like, oh Belize, he did like X, Y, and Z, and Belize will be like, that's the bare minimum of what a human being should do. And I'll be like, oh yeah. And so in this regard, I'm like, oh, he jumped on the Ferris wheel and like threatened, oh my God. And she's like, yeah, that's psychotic. That's like not mentally stable of a person. He could have died. And I'm sitting here going, oh, that's so true. But like, I do agree in the sense that like, I agree that Noah is toxic as hell. They're both really toxic. Like they're fighting. She slaps him a bunch of times, and like it's normal. And they like take it on as like a character trait of their relationship. Like he even says so at one point when she's like, "Look at us, we're already fighting." He's like, "That's what we do. We fight."
Like so, it's clearly a thing. Like we clearly can tell that part of it has to do with when you find a character attractive. It's not that I'm not attracted to Noah, but it's just I just couldn't look past it. You know what I mean? I was watching it with my roommate, and both of us started cringing quite a few times in the early scenes for Noah.
Why? Like what specific? What specific like made you cringe?
Their date.
Noah, not Allie. You didn't cringe for Allie. I cringed more for her. I was like, ooh, she's kind of like.
I didn't cringe for Allie until the breakup. That's when I cringed for Allie. So their date is really weird. There's a part of the dialogue where he literally says that he'll be whatever she wants, which is like not the right mentality to enter a relationship with. I think we can already agree that their relationship wasn't healthy because it shows how often they're just either making out or fighting and there's no like in between. And you even said last night when you texted me, you were like, these guys have nothing in common. He's like, oh, you're not as free as I thought you were, lie down in the street with me to prove it kind of thing, and kind of just peer pressures her into it. And then but essentially says, do what you want. And it's like, well, clearly she doesn't want this. You want to lie down on the street with her and you're kind of just pressuring her into this. And then they do it and then she laughs it off. It's kind of weird. But whatever, I guess we'll pretend that was a cute moment instead where they're just lying down the street and almost getting hit by a car because he's, pressuring her into being more free, which I don't know how that means that, but whatever.
It
It's
is cute, Belize. It is
the
cute.
dancing in the street is cute. That
Yeah.
part's weird to me.
I really want to focus on Allie. Like, here's the thing. My like least favorite trope in like real life, like la vida real, outside of movies and books and everything that is also replicated in fantasy, whatever, is when guys will like pick on you to try to like bait you. And he does that throughout the whole beginning of the film, which like it happens often with like young people, because especially young girls. But like that whole opening when they're like walking down the street, he's just like picking on her and like saying like, oh, you're not as free as me. Like, what do you do for you? I'm like, she's 17. Like, she's pretty dope for 17, I'll be honest. But Allie is like super manic, which here's the thing. I'm going to put myself under that bus immediately because as I was watching this movie, I was sitting there and I was like, am I Allie? Like, just from how obnoxious she is. And like we edit these videos, so like, I see myself a lot, like, oh my god, I'm a little bit obnoxious. And so like I would definitely do the bird shit. I would do that. I would not make out with someone and lick their face in the middle of the street in front of like a 2,000 person town. That was weird. She smacked him. I was like, you would do
He had ice cream on his face. I've definitely done that before. Not in public. We're not gonna
She
put
put
this
it on his face. Okay, I wouldn't do the what am I a bird bullshit, but I would definitely jump on someone at the beach. I think I've done that for sure. But the point I'm trying to say is like she is like really bonkers and off the walls just as much as he is, and that's like kind of the toxicity that like I think that's what makes like their love that summer so intense, is that they were just super like, I think freedom is the right word. I think they just completely let themselves exist together, like as extreme as they wanted to be. And in her relationship with Lon later, she has to kind of subdue herself. And in her brain, she's like, oh, I'm myself with Noah. And like, no, you're just wild with Noah.
Yeah.
So continue to the sex scene because I really want to talk about this.
Awesome. I do agree with you that she's not sane either, in a sense, I guess is the best way to put it. There were more flags for him than for her in terms of how I viewed it, but there were still flags.
That's so funny. Okay. At least let's agree. Let's agree with a handshake to the screen. Let's agree. Both these bitches be psycho. But both Belize and I cannot critique their characters because both Belize and I would do some of this shit in real life.
Some of what Allie's done, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I would never fucking do it. No. We're talking about the virginity scene.
Yes. Not the hot and heavy. That one's perfectly fine. No complaints about that one.
Oh, I got some complaints.
Oh, I mean, like, that one broke my heart, but I'll get to that in a second. No, this one, Allie is clearly not ready. She does not stop talking throughout the whole thing. And all that Noah does every time that she shows that sign is say, are you all right? And then essentially keeps going when she says yes, when it's like really clear to anyone watching that, like, no. I watched it with my roommate. He was also really cringed out. Like, it's not some sort of thing where only girls can read this signal or something like that. Like, there were clear signals that she was not ready. She kept interrupting. And, like, he did, like, the bare minimum in terms of making sure she was okay. It still wasn't romantic at that point. Like, it's no longer romantic if you're going to just be saying, like, oh, are you all right? Okay. And then, yes, okay, it ends with a cute moment where he tells her that he loves her. But the scene before then is not romantic to me.
I do think that he did something wrong. I mean, granted, they both did. Like Allie as well should have. If we're gonna ask him to have the wherewithal at 17 that we as women in our 20s would like a man to have, then we should also have the same thing for her. That like she at 17 should also be like, I'm not ready. You know? Because when I was 17, I was very, very clearly like, I'm not ready. You know what I'm trying to say? With him, I think that what's written on screen is a really accurate representation of two teenagers deciding to lose their virginities. You know what I mean? Like what he does is the average. It's not below, it's not above, it's the average of what every girl at that age would probably receive. You know, anything other than what's on screen is something to be remarked amongst friends. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he did this, but like what Noah does is total average behavior. When he says I love you, that pissed me off because he pulled away from her. He was like irritated by her talking. It wasn't even like an indulgent, like, oh, she's being so cute. No, he was like irritated by her ruining the moment for him. And like he turned his back to her to the point where she has to lean against his back and be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she shouldn't be having to say sorry. Like, she's just not ready, you know? And then he says, look, I love you. He doesn't like say it like it's special. He just says it. And it's after she said it when she was lying on her back and nervous. And she was like, look, I love you and all, but like that pissed me off. I was just like, ooh, that's not a real I love you. And that is the average. That is the average of like, you look, you know I love you, right? Like that is where women get upset about men, is that exact moment where he's not being below or above. He just is the average. And so that whole sex scene, the thing I liked about the virginity scene that I really want to replicate one day in either literature or film is that beat of nervousness where they're both standing in front of each other and they're just slowly taking off their clothes and all you see is just their eyes like taking in the other person after this summer of like heat and passion and love. That was heartwarming to me. That was so beautiful to me. Like he's nervous too, you know? He's just more nervous in the sense of excitement and she's more nervous as in the sense of scared.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even have anything else on that note. I think using the term average is very astute for how he does everything. So, okay, real quick, why at the scene where they're all with the parents, everyone's wearing white but him, and like, but Finn's poor and Finn's dressed nicely and no one calls him out or anything like that? Like, that was really weird to me that Finn's like part of that crowd and laughing with everyone, even though he's like not part of that world. Because they're trying to show like a clash of like, labor versus rich and everything like that. And then at that point I was really confused. I was like, oh, so like Finn's like a rich friend that like brought him into this world then is what it seems like, but it's not.
That is such a good like remark on the film because I also was confused as fuck too. Like he's dating her friend and it's super chill and normal and he also works at the lumber yard with Noah. And so I kind of was like justifying it as like it seemed like he was poor just like Noah, but he just like knew the rules of the game, which kind of bothered me about Noah. I was just like, why can't you just like try? You know what I mean? I hate that concept of characters where they're like, well, this is who I am. You should just accept it as it is. It's like, no. If you're going to go to a 5-star restaurant, you put on a fucking tie. You know? If you're going to meet the parents, you're going to be a good person about it. I will be honest, though, and say that I really respected his character as a man. Granted, it was the 40s, so we have to keep that in mind. I did respect his character as a man when, like, the situation happened with her parents and stuff like that. He would go in. He would face the dad, face the music 100%. Like, I messed up. I took your daughter out. Like, please be upset with me, you know? Because I feel like that's something that hasn't carried on into this generation of men, or at least, like, my experiences. Yeah.
I agree. That's when I do really like that he does that and takes responsibility and stuff like that. I do like how we see scenes with both sides of the parents and stuff like that. Like I like to see the parental role models and everything like that. But yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's like that especially brought my attention to, so is there a conflict? Because it seems like there's not really a conflict except for your parents being kind of weird about this. And I'll get to all of that in the parents later. Because I just keep on going in like sequential order, I guess. The last main toxic part, now that there's not more, is their breakup. And that's when I really felt like Allie was like red flags, because she just starts hitting him and going crazy on him while breaking up with him, like kind of like violently forcing him to like hurt her, almost like hurting him physically the way that he's emotionally hurting her. It's awful. And then at the same, and it's so toxic because at the same time as she does it, then she's like, wait, no, like tomorrow we're gonna wake up and it's all gonna be fine, right? And it's like,
They're not good for each other. They're like not good for each other. Like I get it. Like the beautiful thing is that we see this older couple and they're like clearly happy and beautiful and like look at him, like he's with her to literally their last breath. But in terms of a couple, like the whole time I was watching this, I was like, you shouldn't be together. Like him breaking up with her like that because it got hard and they hurt his feelings, because they did speak horribly of him. We have to say that the parents like literally scream the words, he's trash, he's trash, he's trash. but like at the same time he threw away when the going got hard, which also like might be the reason why Noah at the end, like Noah as a grown man won't walk away when it gets hard, you know, because he already lost her once from that same character flaw, that like he's not going to do it when it, like, you know, later on in life, you know what I'm trying to say? So that was a really good character development in my opinion.
I agree. So my other, I'm just gonna keep going down the
Keep going,
line
yeah, yeah.
of red flags. She comes back to the house, beautiful house. He's a little crazy for making it and not selling it, but I get it. I get it. Like if you built this house, I probably wouldn't. I'm surprised he even tried to sell it.
Wait a minute, are we going all the way there?
That's my next step, unless you want. I mean, the next part is the war and her like marrying and stuff like that.
I want to talk about Lon at one point, but let's go to the let's finish out the red flags and then we'll go back.
Gotcha. I don't talk about Lon until Lon comes back in as a choice. So if you want to talk about Lon now, we can.
I want to talk about Lon now.
Go
I
for
want
it.
to talk about Lon now. Girl, when I was a little kid and I was watching this movie, I remember thinking the whole time, like, it needs to be Noah, it needs to be Noah, it needs to be Noah. It did not need to be Noah. It did not need to be Noah. It should have been Lon. First of all, I think Lon would have been there by her side when she had dementia as an old woman. Lon was a good man. Like, Lon was a really good man. Lon was perfect. Lon had money. Lon was from her world. Lon was fun. Lon sang and danced with her. Lon made jokes with her. Lon didn't judge her when she told him that she went and had an affair. Lon didn't do anything in that regard. He let her have her space. He was like, look, you never have to call. You can just show up like whenever you want. Like, he literally comes to her as a broken soldier, you know, like head to toe, like destroyed. Gets better, gets physically better, head to toe, horribly maimed, okay? Shows up at her school wearing this beautiful suit and a car. You couldn't stop thinking about this nurse. And then marries her. And she chose Noah?
Lon and Allie are the better love story. No one can change my mind on that. And the only reason why they're not the better love story is because you don't see as many scenes. But that whole their story of how they met when she's helping to nurse him, and then he literally gets better and comes back and finds her and asks her out. That's like so romantic. And we just kind of like brush it aside because like, oh, there's Noah. He's really attractive. There's not a single fight between them. They do not fight once. There's nothing toxic about their relationship. Even the way he proposes is so cute, and he actually like asks the parents for permission. The parents are there, and is so happy that he goes up and announces it on stage. Like that's like really, really adorable stuff that this military man is doing. That, you know, most of the time when we see the other, like in Titanic and stuff like that, it's like the snobby guy on his high horse, and that's why they opt for someone of lower class. But like he's not like that at all. He fought in the same war, everything like that. Like the only difference is that Allie is so confused by Noah that she associates this toxic relationship to be love and passion, and she associates this simple, perfect relationship to be boring. And because it's too boring, then she has the issue of like she goes back to Noah, and it's one of those things where it's like, but he literally also reverse it. She meets Noah later. If it was the other way around and she ran to Lon, Noah would have been at that door and he would have gotten violent. Lon didn't go and follow her. He called the hotel. He wanted to check on her. And then when she was ready to come back, he talked to her. But he didn't go to that house. You know what I mean? Like clearly they knew where she was because the mom went. And I think she said that he was coming, but he didn't come. He doesn't come to get her in that way because he's not going to do that. And even when he states all his options, some of them involve like being violent towards this man, but he literally says, but that doesn't get me you, and that's what I want. I don't care about that. Like he's the most sensible person in terms of logic of the whole story. No one else is as logical as this person. And he still tells her that he wants to be with her after everything else that's happened.
Dude, I love the thing that you pointed out that I completely just like sideswept. He didn't go to Noah's house. He waited at the hotel. He wasn't gonna shame her. Noah would have. The house was in the paper. It's a very famous house. It's not hard to find, you know, like there's 2,000 people in this town. I literally texted Belize this. I was like, I feel bad for Martha Shaw. I feel so bad for Martha Shaw. Like, she literally is laying in bed with Noah, who's picked up a drinking problem, who's lost his father, who's devoted his whole life to building this house. I don't know what he does for a job. I don't know what he does for existence. He just drinks himself away. He builds shit in his shed. And then she comes over, they bang. And like, she's lying in bed next to him, like looking for intimacy from this man because she lost her husband at war. And then she says to him, a woman knows when you look into her eyes and see someone else. And he's like, I want to give you everything you ever had. I want to give you everything you ever wanted, but I can't because they're broken. And like the thing is, I love that quote. I'm definitely going to keep it. It was really good. But I'll be honest, a real man would have stepped up to the plate and either cut her loose or been there for her. But he didn't do either. He likes having her around. And it's literally in the narration that he uses her. So Noah is using another woman, whereas Lon, who's probably had women in his past, is here present with Allie. And Allie even moved on. Allie moved on. She literally was in the wedding dress looking gorgeous. She was so happy and she let it all go because of, well, 7 years ago.
Can we just talk about the fact that it's a widow? Like, I feel like there's something psychologically more tortured about someone who's lost the love of their life. And to be with someone like that, I don't think that, like, you know, Noah tactically picturing like that. But it's not like he was, it's not like he was with some young girl who's like then gonna go off and get married or whatever. Like, it's not, it's just, it's someone who's mourned and lost and really needs like something else, like needs some sort of love, any sort of form of love and affection. And that's what you do to her. You just like keep her around, even though you know that she's like grieving and everything, and you're just gonna like have sex with her once in a while. I mean, I guess you're honest about it, but like that's your pick of like the tortured soul to keep this company. It's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Dude, we don't like Noah.
No, the only parts I like is that he's dedicated enough to write a letter every day and then doesn't go and look for her. You know, I do like that he doesn't like go to her college and try to like sends her a letter and then like gets out of the system. He's like, okay, she's not replying. I'm gonna try to move on. Then he can't, whatever, that part's toxic again. And then I like older Noah. Older Noah makes me like hopeful. But older Noah is so we've talked about Lon, who we both agree is perfect. And what I really like about that is that usually there's the whole trope, the other man is abusive or a drunk, or there's something about him that makes him the worst choice, and it's obvious that like the main protagonist, like in Titanic, or like, I don't know if you've seen Love Never Dies. I tried to watch part of it. It's the sequel to Phantom of the Opera. And I tried to watch part of it and I couldn't, because what they basically did was make Raoul a violent drunk of a husband so that it would make sense as to why Christine would go back looking for the Phantom. And it's so messed up. Like, it's so messed up to me to like show that as the constant. I'm fine with some stories having that. It's not wrong that some people have abusive relationships and stuff like that. But I really liked that in this case, it was almost the opposite, where it's like she's choosing the more toxic person, when the one that she has, like, he's not a terrible person at all. He's never literally perfect. And usually we don't show the other choice to be perfect. A lot of times in stories, they're like toxic or jealous or something is wrong.
Which is so funny to me because, like, to be honest, if the other guy is perfect like Lon, that's what makes the choice difficult. That's what makes us go like, oh my God, who is she gonna choose? Because like if you deem, and it's also just not realistic to society and life. There, like, I've read forums online talking about that same trope of like, why do you have to villainize the ex? And I think we do that as a society, like we always villainize our ex, but sometimes like I villainize my ex, but I also have exes in my past that I'm like, they were really good people. They were really good people. We just weren't the people for each other. But that doesn't mean that they were bad people necessarily, which I think like when someone is good, that's what makes the decision so much more like interesting to the audience.
I agree, yeah. And I think I think you can't villainize someone unless there's something to villainize there, in terms of how we talk about our own exes, not in terms of fictional characters. So she comes back to visit him. They're having dinner, whatever. Like, obviously he's in shock first, can't say anything. there's a really weird line there, which I think is part of the times, and that's how they get away with it, where when she's drinking and like asks for another beer or something, or he's like, you should slow down, I may take advantage. I don't know why that's seen as flirting back then, because that's clearly what it is. It's him trying to flirt. It's not him trying to threaten her, because then she like flirts back. That is really weird. That's a really weird flirtation method. Even if it's considered flirting back then, I don't think Lon would flirt that way. So I don't think every man flirts that way. So it's weird that he's doing that. I don't know.
Here's the thing. I do agree, but we're also looking at it with the 2020 lenses. The 2020 lenses, because like that's why if you have conversation with your, that's why like when I have conversation with my grandma about like flirting or like women, like my grandma literally gets so irritated with our generation of women because she'll be like, I would not want to be a man in today's generation. Like this is like a woman, obviously, like I'm not going to tell my grandma's age because she'll kill me, but like this is a woman that's like from the time period of the Notebook, you know, and then like flirted during the time period of the Notebook, and we have constant debate and conversation about like a guy will come up to me in a bar with my grandma there, and I'll just be like, oh my God, like, why is he doing that? My grandma will be like, this is the problem with your generation. Your generation, like, villainizes all men for everything they do without them even doing anything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she has to, like, point out to me that we look at it with, like, a very 2020 lens, which is also the reason why, like, you see a lot of memes and tropes and, like, videos online of guys, like, being either A, they're like, I'm afraid of women, or B, they're like the extreme perfect person that they're like, I'm going to ask for consent before I kiss you. I'm going to ask before I can touch your hand. You know what I'm trying to say? Whereas in the 40s, it wasn't like that. It was much more like the Noah. It was much more like the careful, like blah, blah, blah. Like he's clearly not going to take advantage of her. But I do think Lon would make a comment like that because they're engaged. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think the concept is like, if it's a strange man saying that, for sure, weird. And me, 2020, like, you know, in my 20s, I was watching that and I went, ooh, the same thing you did. I was like, I don't, no, that's uncomfortable. But I had to remind myself, I'm like, these people have a history. These people have like respect and boundary within each other. And like, it's the 40s. We haven't learned what consent was really until like 2000, you know, like when
Yeah.
that was really pressed.
Yeah. And see, you're correct, but this movie was not made in the 40s. This movie was made 2000s.
2004.
2004. They maybe they aren't as woke in 2004 as we are, but they know enough to know what kind of dialogue they need to and do not need to keep, that I feel like they could have made the choice to not have a line like that and still have it be a flirtatious moment, because there's nothing else in the film that has that kind of vibe, really, except that. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I understand to a certain extent, like, okay, you can keep some things because it's with the times, but I feel like we need to figure out a way to do that where it doesn't make it look like it's okay. And this makes it look like it's okay.
Well, I think that's the beauty of what we're doing with our company.
Yes, exactly. So we will figure it out. We got you guys. But yeah, so that's the only thing. But yes, I do agree that with the times, fair enough, Long might also say something like that since they're married. Um, and then when she goes to leave, there's nothing inherently wrong about what he does in terms of, yeah, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'd hate her too. She just slept with you and like brought your dreams back to life, and now she's about to leave again to this guy. I'd probably yell, I hate you too. I get it. You know, like I get that he's like fighting for her now and everything like that. He should not be saying that, you know, this is how relationships work, that it is compromise and stuff like that. I feel like that's a weird thing that we teach people sometimes, the lesson of, yes, there is compromise with relationships, but not to the point of, yeah, you're going to fight a lot and then make love half the time. That's compromise. That's how relationships work, kind of thing. He's got a weird way as to viewing that. But redo the scene, right? 2020, if I could redo it. You see that version where he comes out all violently, not violently, but like, you know, passionately assertive about the idea of her leaving. He's trying to fight for her. That's great. He loves her so much. He's fighting for her. Wow. But instead, same scene, she goes to leave, and instead, he just comes up to her, calmly tells her that he has loved her this whole time and still does. And whatever choice she makes, he will be supportive of because he just wants her to be happy.
But that's Lon.
Yeah. And that's the better guy. And that's why I'm like, it's when
So, but
and
like
that's
that's
why
the thing. Like that doesn't match Noah, like the character we've met so far. What you're describing is Lon. That's exactly what he does. He literally like calmly tells her like, I'm not gonna convince someone to marry me.
but if that doesn't match Noah, how does any of younger Noah match older Noah? I feel like Noah has some of that in him because older Noah is so sweet and so kind that if it's the same person, younger Noah could do that. I think he does have it in him. I think he's just being really selfish in that moment and choosing not to.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily selfish. I think like they like you got, like think about the fact that they're like super passionate beings. Like they fight all the time, right? He let her go. He drove away. He let her go, and he spent the last 7 years of his life in total misery, like regretting the fact that he let her go, that he didn't see her the day that she came to see him at the lumber yard, that his douchebag friend who like R.I.P. he died at war. So sorry, like basically told her like screw off and that he'll go talk to her if he wants to. Like he has literally lived the life of her leaving and him doing nothing about it. And so now after 7 years of total anguish where he doesn't have a job, he doesn't have family, he has nothing, he has literally nothing, he has had this image of her his whole freaking time, this whole time, okay? And so obviously he's gonna like lose his shit at the idea of her leaving. Now, here's the thing. 2020 me, well, if I could rewrite this film, she would have chosen Lon. Would have done the exact same thing. He would have done the exact same speech, yelled it, whatever. And she would have just been like, no, I'm going to go with the guy who you just described a moment ago. Like the guy who's calm and like respects me and wants me to be happy. Because I've been on the receiving end of the, well, so what? We fight, couples fight. And 2020 me was like, but I don't think they have to, you know? And I do want to highlight the fact that you said that like older Noah is similar to that. I think older Noah, once he gets Allie and like once they get married, changes and becomes a better man because he finally has the one thing in his life he's only ever wanted. Like he's not an ambitious man. He's only wanted Allie. And once he gets her, he becomes a better man, you know? Because I will say, I like the fact that I didn't think about it until the end when she like, oh, it's so heart-wrenching when she has like that little moment of lapse where she like realizes that he's Noah and they're dancing and then she's like, I don't know you, and she gets really, really violent. I felt like the fact that Allie is violent when they're young was a really good tie together with older Allie when she's like violent because of the dementia, where it's like it's the same fire and like passion she has, but he has to watch as like doctors subdue her. And that was so sad.
That part is really sad. Yeah. I'd like to, lastly, in terms of present time, talk about the mother because I don't get the mother, and I'd love you to explain the logic behind this character because, as far as I saw it, this woman does not like Noah, is against everything he stands for, is trying to do the best for her daughter, and literally keeps his letters, doesn't even let her daughter see them. And then 7 years go by, so not enough time where like Allie's now had a family or has children now or whatever, like just 7 years, so not much has changed. It's time for Allie to get married, and then she brings her to show her her old lover and basically push her in the direction of Noah. And it's like, wait, so you mean to tell me your parents did the same thing and you don't agree with what your parents do, and then you're gonna what? So I'm really confused as to what change happened in the mom that we don't see that makes her then change her mind as to how to approach this whole thing and where to like push her daughter towards.
I think it's very interesting that you see it as she pushes her toward Noah. I saw it as she's scaring her in the last minute of like, do you want that to be your life?
But what part of that is scary? Because like,
Like let's just talk class right now. We've seen her existence with Lon. Lon has taken her on trips horseback riding along the beach. They go to dinners together. They go fancy theater. I took it as the mother trying to scare her into making the right decision in the last moment that she could. The mother's constant situation has been that she doesn't want her daughter to like end up living a life that's outside of the class that she's created for her daughter. Think about it. It's the 40s and 50s. What is her daughter really going to be doing? She's going to go to college. Okay, she's going to get an education, but what does she really end up doing? You don't know anything about Allie's career. Allie's going to marry rich. That's the whole purpose of women. Think about the speech in Little Women. She's yelled at her for years saying, don't be with Noah, don't be with Noah. Why? Because if she marries Noah, Noah has no ambition. Noah is not of their class. Noah literally every time they hang out is like the kid dancing on the carpet and shit like that. It's like not at all the existence she gets from Lon, where Lon takes her horseback riding on the beach. Lon takes her to theater. Lon goes to the best restaurants with her family. They're literally a replica of her mom and dad who like, I really like the dad. The dad is like a really good person. The dad never is mean. The dad is like super like, just let her be. It's young love, like whatever, you know? When she goes to the lumber yard with her daughter, she's showing at the exact age, that is what Noah's gonna be. You're not going to go to theater anymore. You are not going to have pretty dresses. You are not gonna have this gorgeous ring. You will have the love of your life. And that's what I walked away from when I was younger. That's basically what she's saying. She's like, I was in love with someone just like you're in love with Noah, but I chose the life that I'm living. And now you have to choose. I'm not going to fight with you anymore. I'm not going to yell at you anymore. You have to choose. Do you want to live and that be your future? Or do you want to continue the path that she set for you and have that other thing be your future? But she spent 7 years fighting her daughter, and it now needs to be her daughter's decision.
And that's what I thought she was doing when she brought her there and first said, this is the person I used to be with. But that's not what she, unless I missed that part, she doesn't say, this is what you could have, this, you're gone are the days of the theater, gone are the dresses, gone is your perfect life. She instead says, this is the man I loved that my family stopped me from seeing, and I sometimes come here and still look at him. And then she starts to cry about how, no, but I love your father. So to me, that does not send the message of I made the right choice. Then at the end, she says, I want you to make the right choice. So that's why to me, it almost seems like she's pushing her towards picking love. Because if you are so happy with everything you have, why do you come here and stare at this man so often? This isn't the first time you're doing this. That's a little weird. Like, you guys don't even live in town anymore.
Yeah. Well, I read it very much like this. And no, she's not saying it because I felt like the whole film was saying it. You know, I felt like the whole film was saying like what her mom's issue is with Noah, that like if her daughter marries this man, she is going to live the life of a pauper. What that moment was to me, if we're going to talk about exactly what that specific moment isolated from the whole film was, stop hating me. Stop villainizing me. Stop thinking that I'm just this cruel person who doesn't want to see my daughter love someone. She is her daughter.
I agree with you that that's what the whole film is saying, and that's what essentially the whole conflict is, and that's the side that the mother's on. And I got it up until that point, but to me, for someone who is as crazy as Allie, if that's what you tell her, and you're not literally telling her that in that moment, I would not see any other interpretation that Allie would take away from that, but to then choose Noah.
Well, then that's also like, let's go back into the mind of the screenwriter. Like, that's why he put it there. You know, like, that's why he put it there. Like, there has to be a moment of decision prior to her picking the men that pushes her a little bit into one direction or the other. So if Allie could have seen that and gotten scared and gone to Lon, or Allie could have seen that and been like, wow, I don't want to live a life where I'm regretting not being with the man that I love, and goes to Noah, and that's what she does. Because I feel like if this movie didn't have that beat with the mom, it would just be Allie sitting in her room going, what do I do? What do I do?
All I have to say about younger them, my last thing for me, because I only cried at the older Noah and Allie, and I thought that part was beautiful. But there was a point at the end where I was like, so if you separate these two movies, the one that would still stick with me is the older couple, and I would not care at all if this was a story that didn't have older them. If it's a story that doesn't have older them, I would not be as attached to it.
But keep in mind, you, when you first watched this movie, didn't even remember older them.
That is true, because that's little kid me not seeing the toxicity of it. adult me is only crying. But I do think that little kid me only cried mainly at the adults. I don't see why little kid me would cry at the younger them story, because it doesn't end badly. They end up together.
It ends beautifully.
Yeah. So I do think little kid me was crying at the older couple. I just as an adult didn't remember that that's what I was crying about. So I almost remembered that they didn't end up together. That's what I thought had happened, because since I remember crying about it.
I think as a structure overall, I think it's brilliant the fact that like they have these two parallel timelines that almost feel like parallel dimensions, you know, because like the past just feels so different and like otherworldly of them just like falling in love, being together, that when we see like the present them in the early 2000s and everything's just kind of simple and bland, it really does feel like he's reading her like this fairy tale book. And I think it's so beautiful later on when you find out that he didn't write it, she wrote it as like a way to like help him like through her dementia. That's so nice. Like that moment broke me. Really like Nicholas Sparks, his writing a lot. Like obviously this is an adaptation of a Nicholas Sparks movie. Nicholas Sparks November, what's up? But I liked his book The Last Song way more than the movie The Last Song. And so I'm trying to get the Notebook and A Walk to Remember, the book version, because A Walk to Remember is also, and we're going to talk about that later this month, A Walk to Remember is also set in the 50s and they modernized it to the early 2000s, late 90s. Continue your question.
If you were to do this now, what would you do differently?
Nothing. I wouldn't touch it.
I thought you said you would have her pick Lon. You wouldn't even do that?
Well, yes, but like that's if we're gonna change the whole structure of this movie and then it ends up being Lon. You know what I'm trying to say? If you're telling me like I'm remaking the Notebook and this is the story, then like I can't change anything because all the things about these characters that I don't like I was having a conversation with someone online that I really enjoyed, that they were like, our characters can't be perfect because if they were perfect, there would be no plot. So like all these things that I don't like about the characters, like it doesn't change the plot for me, and they are human beings that are outside of me. It's like if I went to Girl Interrupted and I watched that movie and I was like, oh well, I don't like the way this person is acting, like I'm gonna change it. It's like, oh well, they have a manic schizophrenia, you know, like they have to act like that. So personally for me, I wouldn't change anything. Maybe I would make like the scenes a little less cringy of like the, are you, if you a bird, would I be a bird? Or like the scene where they're like walking down the street together is just way too cliche, but they set the cliche. So what about you? You would change stuff. What's up? What's up?
I would either change it where the dad is the one that's the barrier and the mom then shows her side of the story later on. Or I would cut that scene, because personally, I don't think that scene fits with her character. That scene still doesn't make sense to me, that she is still in the present age that she's at, still goes back and stares at this man. That doesn't fit with her character to me in terms of the rest of this movie and how she acts.
I think it would have been interesting. I didn't think about it until you said it. If the dad was the moment of decision.
That's what I was going to say. I would either have it that he's the villain and she's the moment, or she's the villain and he's the moment. But I don't know if then he brings her and says, this was your mother's old lover, you know what I mean? But
Ooh.
That was kind of the moment that I'm like, I would see the dad talking about that sooner, because the dad is essentially, you know, past Lon. So you could be like, you know, this was your mother's Noah kind of thing. And just show her, because I feel like I see that a lot more than what the mother, just that whole moment confuses me.
I would love to see that in this movie too, because the dad was such a nice character in their youth that like he kind of disappears. I would have really liked to see him have a moment. Oh, that would have been a really good like bow.
Yeah, but otherwise, no, I'm not gonna change I'm not gonna change how they act or anything like that. Like I feel like there are also ways nowadays to show toxic relationships and just show that these exist and people make these choices. And, you know, like, let's have a discussion about this. Let's have a discussion about it afterwards. But this happens, so we're not going to, like, pretend that this doesn't happen. 9 times out of 10, most women in that situation are going to pick Noah. They're not going to pick Lon. And that's the sad part of it.
That's the sad part of it, man. I really hope. Well, I would just want to meet Alon. I just want to meet Alon. Like, I feel so. Lon was so done dirty in this movie. What is the watchability?
If you've never seen it and you're young enough, like I guess a 7.
Okay, I respect that. I saw that number coming from you. I even feel like you would go lower, but you're being polite. You would go like 6.
I'm going 7 for the memory of it because this was one of like my favorite movies when I was little, and I think it made me really sad to see that that's how toxic they were. And I don't know if that was the intention or not when making it, and that's why I'm sad. You know what I mean? Because it's not like there's if that wasn't the intention, great, but then where is that? You know what I mean?
I'd give it like an 8.5 personally. I think the structure of it is really magnificent in terms of like a plot over like in terms of like a plot unfolding. I don't think it's too shocking the ending, but then again, I have seen this, so like that was the part that I remembered. So I would love to sit with a person who's never seen this before. This isn't really a movie that you watch with like a group of people, I think. This is a movie you go see at the theater, and it's just so beautifully shot as well that I personally consider it to be a classic that doesn't get the respect it deserves of being a classic because it's a love story. And I was thinking about that when I was watching it. I was like, wow, this movie is like one of the top like classic films that people talk about and have seen. But because it's The Notebook, nobody really gives it respect. I do respect the fact that it doesn't villainize the other guy. It makes them both really beautiful people.
To me, there are other classics that don't do it. Like, it's not that kind of toxicity. It's a different kind of toxicity because I'm like, well, then why do I make exceptions for other classics? And I'm like, oh, well, it's one thing with the times, and I just didn't make that exception for this one. I think I've been in that relationship before, that kind of relationship where it's like me, not to that point of passion either, but just to like toxicity is like a normal thing. And then and I've had that kind of breakup. So that's why I think I almost am more wary of like, this is not in any way attractive at all. Does not matter. That's Ryan Gosling, who I love. Um,
No, yeah, same. Dude, I've literally been in the fight. I've literally been in the fight where I was the person that said, look at us, we're already fighting. And the other person is like, but what's wrong with fighting? Like, it's okay. Like, it's not a big deal. And I was the one that was like, no, I don't want to constantly be fighting with my partner. Like, that's not cute. That's not normal. I think that's a giant sign of a problem. So that was The Notebook. What I liked about this particular episode is how much we disagreed, because that is what's so interesting. Like, we had a full-on debate about these characters. So continue with what you're saying. What are we going to watch next week?
well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it going to be Dear John?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so next week we are going to be watching Dear John. So stay tuned for that one. And comment below what you think. Would you have chosen Lon? Would you have chosen Noah? Is Allie as toxic as we say she is? What is wrong? What?
You're cracking. Your audio is bad. Can you go back to the what are we going to watch next week?
Okay. So next week we are going to watch Dear John. So we will see you guys then. Please comment below what you thought of Noah and Allie's relationship. Are they both toxic? Would you have chosen Lon? We want to hear your thoughts.
So thank you guys for watching. My name is Sam.
I'm Belize.
And we have been Heartbreaker Films. Thank you guys for watching and see you next week.